Guys, we want to welcome y'all to the first episode of the Rocks and
Oceans.
Oceans podcast. And so this is our first episode, and so welcome. First of all, we want to tell you the purpose of the podcast. It's called Rocks and Oceans because on my side, we want to bring the masculinity side, and so as the fellas, we're going to be the rocks, and then on her side,
We're the oceans. We're going to be the femininity, and we're going to be talking all about masculine and feminine, how they can work together, and the power that we can have from having them work well together.
yeah. So, just a little bit about the vibe of the podcast. Number one, we wanted to be real. We were literally just sitting in the other room, and we came back here and said, "Let's set up a podcast." And it's evidenced by a microphone right here, and us just sitting on the couch.
So we're not going to do a whole lot of editing. We're not going to edit out ums or coughs or even how we look or anything like that because we believe that they're contributing to the relationship issues that people had and have in part, and it seems to be more evident these days. Maybe it's always been there, but it's more evident today than it has at any given time, and a big part of it has to do with like making things look a certain way and things having to be a certain thing and whatever, and like I guess it's just time to sort of like put that all down. AI certainly not helping. And so we wanted to keep it really, really real. Like, this is just what we're like as if you are just getting to hang out with us in our home with us and just kind of hang and have a conversation. So that's what the vibe's going to be like here.
Yeah, yeah. I like what you said. It's not edited.
Yes.
Right? Because we are so edited today. It's like we have these filters, we have these homes that we can't afford, these cars that we can't afford. Everything is doctored. We got all kind of things we're doing to our bodies, and it's just it's getting out of control, and so everything just seems to be getting more and more inauthentic. And so what we want to do is pull that back and bring some authenticity to the space. And so so we want to call this the Rocks and the Oceans podcast. And so
exactly. So you want to tell them a little bit about how you got here?
For sure.
How did you even?
I'll do it. So a little bit about me. I grew up in a small town right outside of Dallas called Terrell, Texas. A lot of people probably heard of it, but it wasn't a lot going on in my neighborhood growing up. You know what I'm saying? We wanted some stuff going on, but it wasn't nothing going on, right? Like, we wanted to be rich, but wasn't nobody rich. You know, we talked about it, but we didn't know how to get it, if that makes sense. And so we were always trying to figure out a way to quote unquote get out the hood, if that makes sense. And so I ended up when I was growing up, you had to play you didn't have to, let me not say you have to, but when I was growing up, most of the people around me, it was some type of sport that was going to get you to the next level. We didn't have college funds and stuff like that set aside for us where I grew up at, and so it was just more of a you gotta do what you gotta do, right? And so I ended up playing football and ended up getting a scholarship in the university that I went to. It was kind of a little culture shock, right? I went to school in Arkansas. I went from basically right outside of Dallas to Arkansas. It was a totally different world, but I learned a lot, like about nature and things like that. But it was just a different vibe. I didn't really learn about nature. I'm lying to y'all.
They told him he'd learn about nature.
It's the nature state. That's what they say. But what I was exposed to is a lot. The university. It was a higher class university of the South, and a lot of people had money there. And so the thing that I saw was they were living a little bit different than I was. Like we just had our meal plan, and they had their meal plan, plus they could go to Burger King and all that kind of stuff. So I'm like, what's going on with this? Like, I'm thinking everybody's the same because I only knew about the environment that I grew up in, if that makes sense. And so as I was in college, we started going on spring break, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, because where I'm from, when you on spring break, you just out of school. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got nowhere to go. But they went on spring break, and so they put some good habits in me. And so as I graduated, I went to work for a Fortune 500 company. and ended up marrying the young lady that I met in college, and we ended up getting married. We had 5 beautiful children, and unfortunately, we ended up getting divorced a little bit ago. But we were married for 17 years. We had 5 beautiful children, and I learned a lot of what to do. But being that I'm divorced, I learned a lot of what not to do, if that makes sense. And so I'm just being honest with that. And again, that's the purpose of this podcast, is just to speak to authenticity in the relationships and dating and communication and boundary, just all different types of things. And so we've learned some things. This is our second relationship for both of us. But we feel like we do it pretty well. And we're not just saying that. I mean, when we're out and about, people compliment us all the time, and they just assume all these wonderful things like we're in this wonderful world, but it's really communication and respecting one another and boundaries and things like that. And so I got divorced, and that led me to coaching, right? Which is what we do also. And so in the coaching space, I learned a lot about myself, right? And in that space, I learned that, a lot of times as guys, we're really repressed. We don't share our emotions. We don't feel like we have a safe space to talk. And so as I was going on my journey of being divorced and trying to put myself back together, I just felt like I was doing it on my own. You know what I mean? Because as a guy, we're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be tough. And, we had we lived in a nice community. We had the social media pics. We did the travel. We did all that. But inside of my house, it was hell in my house, if that makes sense. And it wasn't all hell, but I mean, obviously, if you get a divorce, obviously it was more hell than it was heaven, right? And so, that just led me to the work that we do now, and us wanting to bring this podcast to the world is because it doesn't have to be painful to step into masculine leadership, but it does require some changes. And there are hard changes and there are hard decisions, but they could be made. And so that's the side of the podcast that I want to bring is on the masculine side, and I don't know everything. I don't even confess to know even close to everything, but I'm still learning. Yeah. That's right, and we're going to be getting comments and stuff from you guys to help further the podcast and grow the podcast. But what we want to do is have a space for guys where they can be honest and talk about it, what's going on, because that's why I'm here. If I wouldn't have done the work that I've done, I wouldn't be here doing this podcast telling my story. A few years ago, I couldn't even tell my story. I couldn't even be honest with myself. You know what I'm saying? And so now I can be honest. I can talk candidly about what I used to do, what I will do, what I won't do. And that feels good, And we want to help other men step into that safe space and know who they are, step into a more masculine leadership in their homes, in their businesses or jobs, but ultimately in their communities. And so that's a little bit about me. If you don't mind, beautiful, if you'll tell them a little bit about you, that would be awesome.
I love it. Yes, I will in a second. But I will actually also reiterate that from my side, I feel just as excited and passionate about working with the masculines and the men around here and having those conversations, because I agree there's not a lot of safety for men's spaces. Like, just the way that society has gone, it's like even men giving other men a safe space sometimes, or a lot of times, hasn't even happened.
Right.
And so it's not that I am like, I know it's not my fight, but on the other hand, I so believe in the feminine's role in supporting that process, because really, if we feel like, I think when a lot of women talk, and me included, it's like, well, we feel more emotionally dexterous. We feel more emotionally in tune, and it's like, well, if you feel like that, then help out. Like, we can provide a lot of support, we can provide a lot of guidance, we can provide a lot. Like, it's not masculine leadership, but that is not to say that the feminine doesn't play her role in creating that environment and to create that. So just so everyone knows that's kind of, it's a shared space. Like, it's not meant to divide, because there's all these podcasts on one or the other.
Exactly.
And it ends up being divisive, and people are arguing in the comment sections and stuff like that. And really, are there things to argue about? Sure. But that's not what we're going for, because really we all need what we need, and that's just like a non-negotiable in terms of like if someone has had a certain experience where they truly don't feel like they can feel safe sharing their emotions, then setting up that space is just as important as telling them to have emotions. Otherwise it seems a little unfair.
Yeah.
And I can agree, and I can see the masculine point of like the fear of judgment and the fear of, you know, retribution, or people like women using things against them and things like that. So in this podcast we're going to be very balanced.
Yeah.
In that approach. Yeah, well, and I will expect the same from you, you know.
Absolutely, I got
right?
you.
Like it's a collaborative, because really, I mean, to me it's like you can't have the power of masculine working with the feminine unless they're both really working together.
Absolutely.
Like it'll just always undercut that power. So for what it's worth, and I know you know me, but for anyone listening, like that's kind of what the vibe is, right? On the masculine is important. So that kind of goes to my story, is that I was born in Russia. I am both from the part of the world and the time where it was very traditional masculine and feminine, as it has been in the past. Like that's not what it is, no longer what we represent here.
Mm-hmm.
But I grew up with that very traditional, like the man works, like I grew up hearing like you're going to be a mother, that's your purpose, that's why you're here, like that's, you know,
right.
that kind of thing. And so even though I, you know, for me I was very poor, we were very poor in Russia. I grew up with an outhouse. No heat, you know. I would sometimes sleep with the goat because it gets really cold in Russia, obviously. So it's not like, you know, anything you hear about our businesses or successes or anything like that, like none of us came from money.
Right.
And then when we moved to the States, when I was a kid, which is why I don't have an accent, then I was just sort of on the try to be a good kid in my family. And I also was sort of working to get out of that space. And so my out was piano. Actually, I was a piano performance major, if you can believe it. So I got a full ride there. And so that was how I was able to go to college. But then I started having health problems. And ended up, even though I graduated as a piano major, I ended up going to med school after, and I became an anesthesiologist. So I'm an MD, and I specialize in pain, interventional pain. And so, but another way of thinking about that is really I'm a central nervous system expert. Like, how does the mind and the brain and the body all work together? And then I further subspecialized and learned about NLP. Coaching. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. That's more like, how did the brain hardwire language? Why do you use certain words? How do you interpret the world, and how do you vocalize that in your language? So lots of coaching resources are helpful there, because coaching is just talking. So if you can't understand language, you can't understand how to help somebody. So and so I certify people in doing that. And so as I've merged all together, it's really been, you know, transformation has been my focus for years in my personal business. How do you get someone to change? And what was interesting was that, you know, like coming up all through college and all of that, I really I always was changing. But what's interesting is that I had the same thing. I met a very nice young man in college.
A nice young man.
And he
I like that word.
Yeah, we had it was like, in my mind, I had like the checkbox list that my parents had given me of like, what is the good American life? Like, we brought you here, let's go, you know, don't fuck it up kind of thing. And so I was like, well, that involves getting to school and marrying someone and getting a good job and having a nice house and being able to pay the bills. And like, I was going to do that. Right. So, you know, here I am in school. I got that. I'm going along. And so I was like, that matches up to my list of what a good, a nice, responsible young man is. And my parents in their traditionalism definitely echoed that. It was definitely like he was he met the bill of like the traditional stuff that I should look for. Notably, there were some things missing. But, you know, as I got it, that list, it met. And so for me, it was like, I made it, I'm doing the right thing. And then when we were both in medical school, and when we got to residency, we just started trying to have kids and ended up finding out that I had infertility, which I had already known about. Like I had a hunch about the whole time, and people kept telling me I was crazy. Turned out I was right. It was all good. And that was a huge hit to like my femininity, essentially. My whole understanding of how life was supposed to work and who I was supposed to be as part of that just like completely crumbled. I mean, it knocked me, because I had no context. When your mom tells you that's why you exist, and then you can't do it, like it just took me out. And I was already married at the time, right? And going through that, it highlighted a lot of aspects of our relationship. We were all also together for about 17 years. So when we got married, were already like 8 years in. And so there was a lot of changes that took place then. Essentially, that put me on a path of like, am I gonna live what I'm told? Like someone said, like, you can't have a certain life, and you can't. They also said, you know, I had chronic pain too, which is how I became a chronic pain doctor. And they were like, it won't get better from that either. And so here I am sitting here, and I'm like, I could kind of deal with the chronic pain thing. I was like, I can figure out how to manage that in life. But this one, I was like, it's such an identity busting thing. I like literally can't find a way to think about it. And I think at that point, I was just like, I need to figure out if I'm gonna believe other people and what they say about my life, or if I'm gonna do it. And I always like to be transparent about this. Like, it was 6 months of crying in bed. I can't remember. I think there was like a movie series that came out around that time, and I remember watching it. I had multiple surgeries. I did IVF, like we were trying to have kids and all that stuff. And I remember being all looped up on all the meds and everything, watching the show. And I was in a terrible state. So that decision sounds all like, you know, high level and like I was being really constructive. And it did not look constructive for a good long bit. So if you're in that, if you're like, oh my God, my relationship sucks, blah, blah, it is all good. Don't worry about it. We've been there. But the whole point is that the
story's really good, by the way.
I know, right? The yawning's really helping me.
Really good story.
Yeah, no. So yeah, then I feel like it's okay if it don't look like that, but that's eventually I had to be like, Alex, what are you gonna do, right? And so I didn't know how it was all gonna happen, but essentially over time, that's where, you know, things just sort of happen. And we say we had a very polite marriage. I will say, like, we didn't have a lot of like explosive fights. There was no abuse. There was none of that like blatant kind of disrespect category. But over time, it just seemed like we grew so different, and the chasm became so great between us that like eventually we just realized there wasn't much chance that we'd come together. So it's a very similar thing of like, I just kept trying to put that checkbox life together, and then eventually it just sort of like fell apart in my hands, where it was like, this is not gonna work. Like, my ex-husband and I were such different people. I want to travel, I want to write, I want to explore, I want to do all this stuff, you know, and he's much more of a homebody and likes it that way, and none of what we're gonna say about any of our previous partners is ever gonna be from a place of disrespect. We have a lot of respect for them. But we're also just gonna describe how it actually is. Like, him and I are just different people. Like, and if he were to listen to this or were to come on here, he would absolutely agree with that. He'd be like, yes, we are very different people, right? So that I say is just, but it was crazy how I you can tell yourself the story that it's working while it's actively falling apart, and only after it's actually like really come unglued that you're like, wow, that shit was not working. I don't know what I was telling myself, but it was a very baffling experience. And I think that's where the authenticity piece for us has become really paramount, because you almost like, you can fool yourself so much that you like where you're at and all this stuff, and it just won't be true. So essentially, after I kind of saw what it was a very painful experience of being like, wow, I have essentially built a house of cards. My whole life up until now has been stuff that I felt obligated to make. I felt like I have to get a nice job. I have to go to like, and what's funny now is that I work as a leadership coach and train other people, like other doctors, other practitioners, other coaches, other business owners, and the medicine space is we have a plan for that, like for me to be a leader in the medicine space and to help that industry. But on the flip side, it's like, our lives have really asked us to be so flexible about all that, because the things that I thought I was creating, that I was going to like build and then set it and forget it. Most of those are gone at this point, even, you know what I mean? So life's funny like that. I feel like most people are like that, but sometimes it can be easy to like, to not let go. Like, you just are like, yeah, well, that's what I was planning, so I'm going to do it. And you just kind of keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I don't know, maybe this will be the podcast for some people to be like, hey, I don't have to do it that way anymore. Like, I'm truly not happy doing it this way, and I don't have to be miserable my whole life just because.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got to divorce land. And then we were so we're going to transition to our story. We were in a coaching program separately. And we didn't know each other at all.
Right.
And actually, we did not interact during that group.
No, we didn't even talk.
Yeah, we saw each other on coaching calls. And like later on, we obviously realized that like this is, this was happening. Yeah, who I just remember your laugh. But yeah, then you slid into my DMs.
I did.
Yep.
I did. So what I did was, what had happened was, I like we said, we were going through divorce, and I want to echo one of the things that she said earlier. This is not about us talking about partners or anything like that. This is just about us talking about our experiences, helping people not go through some of the things that we went through from a masculine and feminine space. And so, like I said, we respect our partners and we wish them well. But what did you just ask me? How we met. Okay, so how we met, we were in a coaching program, like you said, and we didn't know each other at the time, but I was in the coaching program because, as I mentioned earlier, I was going through my divorce, and at the time, I was living upstairs in my house. So, can you imagine living upstairs in your own house? And that's pretty much, I mean, I could go throughout my house, but it just kind of felt weird because my wife and I were separated at the time, and that was kind of like our little deal. That's something else I learned, but that'd be on another podcast. But I was living upstairs at the time, and I was looking for something, and a friend of mine, she was like, hey, man, you should check out this coaching program. And I had never been exposed to coaching. This was, I think, 2019. Or 2020?
No, it was 19, if not.
Yeah, it was 2019. It was 2019. Yeah, it was 2019. So it was during COVID. So it was right when COVID started. Everything was just going on Zoom. And so we're in this coaching program. It's like 500 people in there. So we didn't know each other. And it was a Facebook group that we had. Like once you get, during the coaching program, and then once you're done, you just, as the alumni, you stay in this group, right? And
this is like a networking connection, kind of stay in touch kind of group. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened was I saw her in McKinney. I was already pretty much, my wife and I were separated for like over a year at this point. And I saw her in McKinney with some people from the coaching group, but I didn't know them or her. I just saw them, and I just slid in the DM. I was like, what are y'all doing? And she was like, you should come over. And I was like, but at the time, I was studying the masculinity stuff, and I was like, well, I'm not fully divorced yet. I didn't tell her any of this, but that's what I'm thinking in my head. Like, I'm not fully divorced yet. I'm living upstairs. I ain't feeling good about this. Man, if we go on a date or something, she like, go to your place. Like,
and I am like, I'm just like, I tend to just sort of like be friendly, and I'm a little clueless sometimes out in the world. Like, as in, I never think someone's like hitting on me. So
well, I wasn't at the time.
Yeah, and no, it's true. But I think I'm like bad at recognizing it sometimes. I don't always like pick it up. But my brain was just like, there's a bunch. I was getting together with people from the group, and I was living in Portland at the time.
Yeah.
So in Portland, I was getting together with people from there, like networking and just meeting up and stuff. So I was just doing that. It didn't even really float across my.
I think I saw your potential. Like, I knew it wasn't time for me to actually engage as far as trying to date. But I thought you were cute, and for what I don't know what it was. It's just my intuition. I don't know what it was.
Fast.
Yeah, because we didn't know each other. We never talked in a group or something. And what it was she was at a town maybe 30 minutes from where I live, and so she was with some other people in the group, and they posted a pic for social media, and I was like, oh, because she was cute. I thought she was sexy with what she had on. I was like, huh. And she was like, oh, we're up here hanging out. And it was like 30 minutes from where I live. And she was like, you should come over. But at the same time, I was married and I was living upstairs, like I said. And I was like, my gut was like, no, this might be a good girl. So I might not need to do that right now. So, and so I was like, no, I'm not going to come over. Because in my mind, it was going to look like a double date. And I was technically still married. Like, we were separated, we were done, but I was technically still married. So, and just on the masculinity, I didn't want to bring you into something that wasn't closed off yet.
Yeah.
And so, because I was studying all this stuff at the time, and I was like, no. Because I felt like if I came there that night, it was going to look like a date or something like that. And I just didn't want that yet. Yeah. So, fast forward, we didn't talk for like a year.
Yeah, it was like, because I had flown in, I think I was doing an interview at the time.
You were getting a job here in Dallas.
Yeah, or something. And then, I had stayed just to hang out for a couple days. And then I flew back. One time, we still did not meet up because I was like, hey, I'm back again. Still no, because we have like our Facebook messages. I was like, hey, what's up? Hey, nope, can't do it. Okay, oh, how about now? Nope, still can't. Yeah. Like, we went back and forth a couple times on stuff. Yeah.
So, she actually got the job. You got the job and you moved here, and this is like probably, I don't know, 14, 15 months after the initial interaction. So at this point, I shoot the DM now because me and the wife separated, and we're going our separate ways. We're selling our house. We're doing all of our stuff. And so I hit the DMs, right? And I was like, hey, man, we should get together because I'm learning about the masculinity, but I'm still not thinking it's a date because I just got divorced. It's just, you know what I'm saying? If you've ever been divorced, you know what I'm talking about. It's just a creepy feeling. If you've been with somebody for a long time, it's just really weird and creepy just to go out and start hunting again and looking for chicks and
you're like,
going
I'm
on dates.
actively trying not to do this most of the time, and now all of a sudden I'm gonna do the opposite.
Like I'm grown. Like now I got to go back to like bars. At least this is what was in my mind. Like obviously dating has changed from when I got married. Like I'm thinking about going to bars and clubs to pick up chicks or whatever, or church, right? But anyway, I'm thinking that. But so I slid in a DM and I just said, hey. She was like, hey, I'm back in Dallas, and I was like, hey, let's meet up for drinks. One of the things I learned, fellas, when a lady reaches out, you set up a date. It's your first free tip. So she reached out, like, hey, I'm back in town, so I'm reading all this stuff.
I actually had moved. And
she had moved and got the job here. And I was like, oh, hey, let's meet for drinks. Now, I'm still been in my marriage. I'm not wanting my wife, but I'm still feeling weird about another relationship. So we just meet up at a restaurant, and it's at like 6 o'clock. And she got there, and we just started talking and hanging out. And so, you want to add anything to that?
I had on my radar because it was like I had hung out with people from the group before. I really wasn't thinking, even though we kept trying to meet up and it didn't work. I don't know why. It's just like I think it's because I think a lot. Y'all will come to learn this on the podcast. And my brain's like a superpower, but it also has some downsides, right? As in I can think myself into a thing. And I think somehow my spirit knew, like, don't let her catch wind of this because it's going to be bad. So I was like, I don't know what I was thinking, but I was just like completely not thinking date when we got together, or when we were going to get together. And so it was a Saturday, and I had been running errands. Like I had gone, I can't remember. Yeah, I'd gone all over Dallas, like, because I was new to the area. So I was, like, trying to get stuff for my new place and trying to figure stuff out. And I was just, my job wasn't going to start for another couple months. So I was just literally, like, bumming and hanging out. And so I showed up, and the stuff that I had been out on, I mean, this is June in Dallas. And if you've ever been here, it's hot.
It's real hot.
So, like, basically, I'm saying a lot of words to say I didn't look my best. I had frizzy wild hair and almost no makeup on and stuff like that, and just like a casual outfit. I just really didn't think, but we got there and we matched.
But I mean, for both of us, it wasn't a date though.
It wasn't. It was
a group
thing,
meetup because all the people in the group were meeting up. So we had just got caught up in the social media, and I mean, just it happened that we both liked each other. But we were like, hey, let's meet up. Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't know if our spirits had an ulterior motive, but we were just like meeting up. But it was not a date for either one of us because I just had on like a t-shirt and some shorts. Like, I wasn't like.
The dry cleaners messed up that t-shirt.
I wouldn't. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I hate that. That was my commemorative first date.
Well, I got
t-shirt.
You that other one for our
anniversary,
but the updated bear one. Yeah, anyways.
Yeah.
So, you're like, y'all, I'm not there. Anyways,
I know, right? Sorry, guys.
So what we mean by real, we're not editing this out. But yeah, so we showed up. We started talking.
Yeah, we get there like 6:00, and next thing we know, like on a movie, the ladies sweeping up around us.
They're like turning over the chairs, like putting them on the bars. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So we don't realize 6 hours has went by. So the place closes at midnight. We've been there from 6 to midnight. No telling how many different patrons have come and gone. But we're not even paying attention.
Our waitress had changed out. Like the people, the wait staff had changed over or something like that. I do remember the other one, and her name was Kim. But Kim at Snuffers, if you're still there, what up? But
it was Kim. I do remember that.
I know, right? Yeah. But about like 4 hours in, I didn't know it was 4 hours in because I didn't look at my phone, but about 4 hours in, I did go to the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh my god, I've been like this with my hair. Like I'm saying, I showed up like I didn't think about it. So
we
then
started vibing a little bit.
And I didn't like register what my face looked like. So then when I went in the mirror, I was like, oh. So then I put my hair up and like I pinned it back or whatever. I can't remember. I didn't want, it's like one of those for the feminines listening. I know this is just like a little on the backside, but our thought process is like, you can't come out looking much nicer because it's obvious that you did something and you care, but you have to look like a little bit nicer, but it can't be noticeable. You know what I'm saying, girls? Okay, so that was I was just like a little
tip for the ladies.
Little splash some water and whatever, but tip for the ladies. I think they know it. Probably tip for the rocks around
We
here.
just didn't know. Yeah. We just got put on game, fellas. My bad.
Or if you didn't know, that's okay. Welcome on the feminines. It's cool. That's just. I'm not even saying you have to do it. That seems to be what we do. And so I did register that. I did not know it was that many hours though. And so then we got kicked out, and then we went out to the car, and then I was like, do you want to come over and we keep talking? Let me put some important
information in here, right? So what had happened was, this is good information for y'all. So I'm studying all this masculinity stuff, right? So number one, we set this date, right? And number two, we're there, we just hanging as people from the coaching group, right? Mm-hmm. It literally was platonic, right? But as we're there, we start vibing. Like, we got a bunch of similar interests. We were both married 17 years. We're like,
we had like the same story.
Almost the same exact story. So we started vibing. But what had happened was when she came from the bathroom, cause I was studying my stuff, she started touching my leg under the table.
Not on purpose.
Yeah, she don't even know it. She was doing it subconsciously, probably because we were just talking.
I was just getting in my chair, so you know when you swing your legs around, you're like more, but it's true. Psychological. Well, that makes it sound like I put my,
no, they're good. They're good. I like
They did not say he's lying. No, let's just explain. Okay, it's because I mean, if you're really not vibing with someone psychologically, you're not comfortable, and your brain's going to be very aware of where your boundary ends and their boundary begins, like the boundary of them.
Yeah.
So it's not when people say in dating, when especially feminines touch the masculine, as even if it's in like I'm saying, he picked a bar with very narrow tables, so the chances of my legs hitting his legs were very high.
I didn't realize it had narrow tables.
What do you know? Right? Okay.
Who would have known?
But if I'm with a creep, as a woman, I'm very much going to make sure that no part of me touches him.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how narrow that table is, right?
True story.
So then, for me to feel comfortable with you, my boundary began to include you, and that's why my brain didn't necessarily monitor where your legs were in space, right? So it's like, he's not wrong on that, as in, I had no idea because I was not on that conscious wavelength, but my body and my subconscious mind, exactly.
She was caught up in the sauce.
That's how it goes. And so that's what he's saying, is that's why it works. It's not like a weird, like, is she gonna touch you? Like, and women do not go out and be creepy touching men just cause.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's not what it is. But it's to understand
just because she touches you, that don't mean anything either. Like, there's a whole vibe going on.
Yes, exactly. But there is truth to that when it comes to brain based, and that's why, around here I'm going to interject a little nerdiness from my MD side, A, because that's who I am, but two, because it's helpful to understand, like, you're not just like following tenets out of a book per se. They are based on a real, like, masculine and feminine principles are based on real human movement. Mm-hmm. It's like how we like things, how we see things, what we respond to, and psychology goes into a lot of it. And so to your point, I was already kind of putting down plus when we took a picture, I'm like, she was putting down what's called the attraction vibes. Like she said, she had fixed her hair. We started touching a little bit, and so I knew, like, okay, this is no longer a meetup. This is kind of turning into a date, and I think both of us started realizing, like, oh, we really like each other, and so we ended up staying there, and then we got kicked out of the restaurant, but we were still talking, so we wanted to continue talking. So we went to my place was close, so we just went to hang out. And I appreciated that he opened my car door when he offered to give me a ride home. He didn't have me get Uber or whatever.
Yeah, she was gonna Uber.
Yeah, because I had Ubered there.
I'll take you home. It's no problem.
Yeah.
And I wasn't taking her home, guys, to do the sneak in her apartment. It wasn't that type of deal, because I had just met her, and it was just, it's just a gentleman thing to do. I'm not going to put her in an Uber. I felt like we were vibing. We've been there 6 hours. So it's like, I can take you to your apartment and drop you off. Like, she had felt safe enough to get in a car with me.
Exactly. And now, I mean, some women really, and now I have a sexual abuse history in my childhood and things like that. And so I do understand the perspective. Some women are like, I'm not going to let someone know where I live. And fun fact, I did have to call the police on not one but two men. And so, like, I get that perspective. Like, you don't always want to let somebody know, but I feel like what we had is the social currency of having been in a group where it's like, it's really only people trying to self-develop, get better, to grow, to expand.
And it was 16 weeks, 12 or 16 weeks?
Yeah, like, it's a long time, it's intensive, so people are, like, falling off if they're not really into it. So, in my mind, from our interaction, and my intuition's pretty turned up, or at least I pay a lot of attention to it. I was feeling the vibe of like there's safety here, and so I felt that, and so that's why I felt fine.
Yeah.
Like not Ubering, but I feel like men don't need to take it personally because it might not be about you being unsafe. If she starts moving that way, you might get an inkling to like hear for things she says that may indicate that something has happened to her. Because it's 1 in 4 women that we know about is the statistic, but as you know, a lot of people don't say anything. And for the men, it's actually quite high too. And the number that we know about is even less. So if you get some indications that someone is having like a thing, on that kind of, if you don't know them, they don't know you well enough to take it personally yet. So just assume it's not about you until you have enough interaction for it to be about you. And then it can be, but really like that is too early, right? It's too early for you to take on like, oh, I'm not saying blah blah blah. Okay, just chill out. Like, if she gotten raped or whatever, like, that is not for you to say when she needs to feel comfortable getting into a car, having you know where she lives, all that stuff. Because I think some men read the masculine books and they're like, I'm going to come pick you up. And then the women's like, I really don't want you at my damn house. And so that's that kind of thing where we have to be respectful of the experiences while still understanding the principles. Right? If you had offered to take me home and I said no, you would have still like finished up.
I would have checked in. I would have stayed there till the Uber got there. And
right, exactly.
Checked in did you make it home okay? But yeah, absolutely. Piggybacking on what she's saying, is like you have to respect. That's part of what we're wanting to bring to you guys is understanding how to respect the masculine and the feminine. So the feminine, obviously, as far as physically, she's a weaker species, so she's gonna have a lot more things going on in her head than a guy would. You like, well, why do you want to get in a car with me? Well, she's thinking that you big, dude, you strong, and you know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that females have to deal with that us as guys don't think about. And so if she's not wanting to just get in a car with you on the first date, don't take that personal. That's just maybe, like she said, that's a safety thing. She doesn't feel safe with you yet, but you can get there. But if you go crazy in that moment, you won't have a second date. And this is what guys don't get, and that's what the podcast is about. So we already are kind of giving you guys what it's going to be about. Exactly. We already started some of the stuff in our conversations if you're listening. But we ended up hanging out at her house probably like 2 a.m.
Well, okay, the car story is we get into the car.
Oh, yeah.
And he looked at me and said, "You're cute." And then he went to kiss me, and I kissed him back, and that was good. And then he went turn on the car, and we were like getting ready to leave, and I said, and I surprised me as saying that, and I was like, "Can I hold your hand?"
So the cutest thing ever.
We still joke about that so much and like laugh about it.
I said sure,
and he said sure. Because that was, and then we held hands on the way to my house.
Yeah, we did.
So we still, I don't know. I think that's that kind of thing where like you just feel it like the feminine feels. So sometimes that's where the feminine rules, and masculine have a hard time understanding this. The feminine doesn't function under rules quite as much. Like the masculine has to make sense to the masculine, and to sort of follow that narrative, and that's the straight and narrow. Whereas like when you can read the situation's ever changing. So it's like women seem a much more shapeshifter, right? But that's why it's like that has to be honored, because that's that flow of like we're sitting here in our home like co-parenting together, like doing all the things, and so it's like, did we know on some level, and did I feel into that and like just kind of go with it, right? So it's like if you have a lot of rules of like, I can't ask him for this the first date, I can't do this the first date, I'm not supposed to come across that, I'll put to you that sometimes that'll be something really sweet that stays forever. Like that's something that we like talk about, and in the car I'll be like, I want to hold your hand, and like we just talk. It's just become such like a cornerstone of our actual relationship. Had I not followed my like, and now whatever, for all the many reasons that I can't stop things coming out of my face, like I do tend to just say things, right? We both do.
It's all good.
But, you know, had I not felt comfortable being like, let's just do that and kind of have it within me to see how it goes, then I don't think I would have done that. So
Yeah.
I really think it's, for the feminine, the rules are a little less impactful than maybe some of the stuff that you hear Jay says. It'll make more sense to be like, I'm going to follow that. Like, she touched me? All right, let me see, you know, if I can sort of advance toward and kind of move the date or the interaction that way. Whereas the feminine you may just take what I say and then mishmash it within you to create your own new concoction of what it looks like. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that is kind of how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, needless to say, we had a good date, and we had, I don't know how many great dates since then, and here we are. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we went to just to close it out, we went to my apartment. There was no riffraff. There was no, you know, shimmy.
Yeah, I didn't get none that night, fellas, and I was cool with that. Again,
no tripping on
I
it.
wasn't tripping. I was like, man, you know, we done went out to eat for 6 hours.
Yeah.
I done brought you home. This is stuff guys do.
They
right?
really actually
They start
do.
tripping out right away, and what happens is that young lady doesn't feel safe. That woman doesn't feel safe. And because she's thinking, if he tripping already, this only gonna get worse. If he just tripping about taking me home, if he just tripping about dinner, or you know what I mean, if he's already acting crazy on the first date,
yes,
I'm gonna leave you where you at home.
I
boy.
learned that. You know where I learned that? My father.
Yeah.
He said, just make sure you tell him no one time before you go any further. One no on something.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's an easy one too. If someone's trying to fuck on the first date and you don't want to, that's an easy one to pick on that. That's the no, right? Whereas I could have said no, thank you on the driving home. Basically, one no, and this is what my dad said, one no will tell you how they react to most no's, right? So if you don't want to be married to the guy that like the person on the credit card line tells him no and he punches a hole through your walls, right? That's the kind of thing you're vetting out on those some of those first dates, because any tripping out that happens along the way of any of those very normal interactions, like, man, I don't know you, any no freak out essentially tells you a lot about who somebody is. So it's a really, I mean, I think that coming from, you know, a man to say about men, I think is an insightful sort of thing, and it has helped me a lot in life. And so for me, that has always been something I kept to. And we certainly did on that one, and it was good. There was no freak out. But yeah. Yeah. And then we've been dating ever since.
Yeah, and to that point, just to tie that up, like, we don't know what someone's background is.
Yep.
So you don't know why they're tripping out. You think they're tripping out because of you, but you don't know why they're tripping out. They may have been kidnapped or something, or, you know, that's extreme, but you know what I mean? You don't know their background, and so it's important to give that person space. If they say, hey, man, I just want to ride the Uber home, it's time for you to go home. The best and the most respectful thing is to respect their boundaries and go home, or let them ride the Uber or whatever it is they say they want. So yeah, so that's good. But yeah, we had a good time, and obviously we still rocking today.
Exactly. Yep. And heck, I mean, if you're a masculine listening to this and you're like, I do not, maybe I freak out sometimes. Hey, there's a reason for that too. You're in the right place, so it is all good.
Yeah. So we were wanting to talk about what to expect coming up in the podcast, but if you've been listening, I think you've heard in here some of the things of what to expect is like talking about, like we said, dating, right? Talking about short-term relationships, talking about long-term relationships. Obviously, we feel like we're shifting over to the long-term side. We're coming up on 3 years. But we're going to be talking about all the different phases and all the different dynamics of relationships and how to communicate, how to set boundaries, because it's important. Like something that she said earlier today is, you know, too many couples are in the restaurants on their phone. They're not even talking. They're not even paying attention to the kids. I mean, most people are just in their own worlds. And what we got to do is we got to come out of these phones, come out of these games that we playing on the phones and social media, and we got to reconnect with each other. And that's what this is about.
Yeah, let's do it. So you can find us YouTube and TikTok. Rocks and Oceans Podcast, and then support at rocksandoceanspodcast.com is where you can send in any questions or any experiences that you've had. We do want to do episodes that are about like real life and interactions, real life situations, like problems that people are having. So please just go ahead and hit us up there, or maybe shoot us a DM in one of the places, and we will definitely record something and tell you what we think. All right. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, y'all.